Manor Lords, a medieval city builder with serious immersion and a surprising amount of fighting. But should you buy it right now? This video will answer all of your questions by starting with a 60-second, too long didn't read overview of the game so you can tap out early if it doesn't appeal to you. Then we'll see what it's like to actually play it by examining the gameplay loop and mechanics before looking at some practical considerations and the different types of players this game might appeal to help you decide whether this game is worth your time and money today. If Total War, Banished, and Anno 1800 had a three-way baby, you would get Manor Lords. It's a city builder without grids, leading to natural-looking curves and variety in the shape and size of buildings that leads to a ton of immersion. Starting with a handful of families, you will instruct them to collect wood for construction and generating heat, as well as collecting food to survive the harsh winter months. Each house, known as a Burgage, contains a family that can be allocated to a job, and each house has needs. Satisfying those needs increases your approval, which leads to more families moving in. Each house can be upgraded, with each level bringing more demands to satisfy that house. Once you can survive the winter, you can create a variety of production chains that produce goods to please your workers, equip an army, or trade the excess for wealth to equip your army. So if you like the sound of walking amongst your peasants, expanding across the map to set up towns in each region with detailed and bloody combat as you defend your little manor, Manor Lords might be your cup of tea. If that hasn't put you off, then grab a drink and get comfortable as we look through the detail of what you actually do in Manor Lords. Although there are currently 3 different game modes, the basic principles and gameplay loop are the same for each. There are no factions to choose from in Manor Lords, but there are customization options before you fire up each playthrough, though ultimately you are doing the same thing with the same people each time. Starting with a handful of families, your initial priorities are to collect enough fuel and food to last the winter, as many food sources only produce food in the summer months, and the consumption of fuel for warmth will double in the winter. Each region of the map contains only a handful of resources, so at first you will need to form your production chains based on the resources you have access to, until you conquer other regions. Some regions have better soil for farming, whereas others might have bushes where you can pick berries in the summer or a herd of wild animals for you to hunt. Others have a deposit of iron or clay, the list goes on, but this forces you to extract what you have access to and trade for what you don't have. Once you've reached a point where you can provide for your citizens and export goods for wealth, you can pay to hire mercenaries or build up your own army to take on nearby bandit camps or to take on the Baron, but more on him later. Each family needs to be allocated to a worker slot in a production building. There isn't a day-night cycle where workers sleep, but they don't spend all their time at their work either. They will spend time resting, going to church, fetching food for their house, and more. So basically, you will spend time watching your workers, wondering why they're not spending more time at their job to produce you more goods. Sometimes it's a bug, but usually there's a mechanical reason why they aren't working harder, and there's usually something you can do about it once you know why. Logistics is a big deal, as all goods in Manor Lords need to be physically moved. There are no magic storehouses that transport goods for you. Each log needs to be felled from a tree, carried to a warehouse, picked up and carried to the market, then picked up and taken home to burn on the fire to satisfy that house's need for warmth. Therefore, where each worker lives and works is a logistical consideration, as well as the positioning of granaries and warehouses so their workers can most efficiently pick up and deliver their goods. And bear in mind, each worker has their own house to look after, so will spend time going to market to pick up food and fuel for their own needs. Using your production chains to satisfy the needs of each house is one of your core objectives in Manor Lords. The number of needs satisfied directly influences your percentage level of approval. Once your approval is above 50% and you have spare housing capacity, new families will arrive. At first, needs are relatively easy to fulfill, so you can upgrade each Burgage to level 2, but then they have more needs that you may not yet be fulfilling, which will tank your overall level of approval. So you need to upgrade your Burgages in a controlled way, with level 3 being the highest level. Burgage plots are highly customizable and are surprisingly important, considering they're just houses. Firstly, you build by clicking the 4 corners of the plot, and provided it isn't blocked by anything, the game will give you an option of how many burgages to build on that plot, and whether they will have future space for an extension. This leads to, frankly, odd-shaped houses and plots behind them, giving the game a real organic look compared with grid-based city builders. Burgage plots can be expanded to include more than one family, provided the plot was big enough in the first place, and you can include an extension. An extension could be a vegetable plot in the back garden for workers to look after and harvest from in their spare time, doing their part to get everyone through the winter. They could house pigs for meat or goats for meat and hides for clothing. Eventually, you can upgrade them to an artisan to manufacture boots or even weapons, but doing so takes that family out of the general pool of workers. So there's plenty of balancing to consider. In doing all of this, Manor Lords takes the humble house and makes it a potential powerhouse for your economy and manufacturing. In addition, there is a wide variety of buildings for specific production processes. You don't need to worry about separating housing and industry. If anything, it's best to break up your town into clusters, where a worker's house is close to where they work, and the location of their workplace might be based on where a resource deposit is. Then you'll need to think about how best to transport the goods they produce to the market. Markets in Manor Lords are somewhat autonomous. You select a plot for a market, the size of which will determine how many stalls could be placed there. But actually placing a market stall is up to your citizens. When there is an unfulfilled need for food or goods, then granary and warehouse workers will set up a stall at one of your market plots. Then those that live nearby can walk to the market and take the goods back to their house to fulfill their needs and maintain approval. You could have one large market in the center of town, but having multiple smaller markets means less travel time for your citizens, provided you have enough granary and warehouse workers to man that number of stalls. Once you have an abundance of resources, you can begin to trade them for profit. Workers allocated to the trading post will sell goods if you allow a good to be exported up to a certain amount that you want to keep. Then you can purchase trade routes so that a specific merchant will visit you. It costs money, but results in more frequent trading for that good. Your citizens will need help shifting around all these goods, which is why it's helpful to purchase multiple oxen, horses, and mules to speed up the process. Eventually, you'll have a fleet of them, either for general use when needed or allocated to specific buildings. The seasons mean everything in Manor Lords. Surviving the harsh winters is your first objective, and the snow-covered scenery looks frankly beautiful. As you speed up and slow down time, you will always have an eye on which month you are in, as well as which season, particularly due to the level of fuel consumption and scarcity of certain vital resources in the winter. Although entirely optional, farming can be a big feature in Manor Lords, which is of course tied closely to the passing of the seasons, with ploughing, sowing, growing, and harvest dictated by the seasons. Farming is labor-intensive, so you'll likely find yourself allocating many workers from other jobs to farming during the harvest, which obviously distracts them from their other work, but gives you even more immersion as your work revolves around the time of year and the shifting priorities to ensure your people's survival. You can also purchase animals and have them in a field. My personal favorite are sheep, who can breed, have their wool shaven and processed into clothing, or butchered into meat, with excess lambs and sheep being exported for wealth. Good old lambs. Once you've built up some wealth, you will start looking abroad. The map is split into several regions for you to conquer, but first you will likely send troops to deal with the various bandit camps dotted around the map. They'll steal things from you occasionally, and you get a nice reward for dealing with them, which can be used to ultimately help you purchase new regions. Once you gain a new region, you decide how many resources to invest there and essentially start up a new town. Battles in Manor Lords are surprisingly detailed, considering this is predominantly a city builder. But don't go thinking this is as big or detailed as Total War, because you are limited to only a handful of units, and the game doesn't yet include cavalry. However, the units you do have can be controlled, much like in Total War. You can set them to differing levels of aggression or even battle tactics. as you instruct your units to slowly give ground, perhaps luring the enemy into a flanking attack. Combat in Manor Lords is satisfying, but it is small scale and still very much in development. In each region, you will be able to construct your manor. You don't have to, but it's a good idea as you gain a retinue of heavily armoured and upgradable men-at-arms, as well as the ability to tax your people to gain personal wealth. It's also fun to build a wall around your manor, as well as other upgrades to expand your retinue, for example. Some of the best battles you will have will be around your strategically placed manor as the enemy tries to get through your walls and your archers rain down arrows on them. As you construct more burgages and upgrade them, you will gain development points, which can be spent on the development tree to unlock what are effectively just bonuses. One will result in your mines having infinite resources. Another will enable you to fish in the winter as well as the summer, which will really save your bacon. The unlocks can be powerful, perhaps too powerful, but you need to remember this is an early access title. There are currently 3 game modes for you to choose from. As the other 2 are quite challenging, most players will start with Rise to Prosperity, which is basically city building in peace without any violence. We then have Restoring the Peace, which has the same city building elements, but you actively seek to dominate the map and end up taking on the Baron, who is an off-map bad guy with loads of men, and I'm happy to admit, he's kicked my ass every single time. Finally, we have On the Edge, which is more of a survival mode where you start in the depths of winter and will face relentless attacks from outside forces. Hopefully by now you have an idea of what it's like to actually play Manor Lords, so let's address some other more practical considerations that might affect your purchasing decision. The tutorial in Manor Lords is basically some text as you play the game. You will almost certainly need to seek out external guides on YouTube and Steam, because this game does take time to learn, even for those who are quite familiar with this genre. As with most city builders, you will need to set aside a good 2 to 3 hours per session to get the most out of the game. Although theoretically you can play in short stints, Manor Lords was designed to be an absorbing experience, where hours seem like minutes. There is no multiplayer in this game whatsoever, and the developer has confirmed there won't be. The game is on sale with a 30% discount approximately once a month, so there is basically no reason to pay full price unless you really have no patience whatsoever. So with that said, is Manor Lords right for you today? As always, it depends who you are. If you enjoy an immersive and peaceful city builder, especially in the medieval period, then Manor Lords is simply the perfect game for you. There is a mode dedicated to this style of play, and with the hauntingly beautiful soundtrack and ethereal beauty of the graphics in Unreal Engine 5, it's perfect for peaceful city builders and casual players alike. If constructing production chains is your thing, then Manor Lords has a lot to offer you. However, there are better alternatives on the market, such as Against the Storm and Anno 1800. If you enjoy Total War, then Manor Lords has a lot to offer, but ultimately the combat is on a much smaller scale, and there is of course way more in terms of building, production chains, etc. So if you enjoy Total War, but always wanted more city building, then I'd say it's worth a try. If you enjoy a polished game, then I recommend avoiding Manor Lords, as it's in early access with updates coming slowly but surely from the sole developer. It's a beautiful game, but it's not perfect. So if that's what you're looking for, best to look elsewhere. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask, or if you already own the game and have some additional information you'd like to add, please let us all know in the comments below. If you found the video useful, please leave a like for the algorithm gods, and if you enjoy this style of review, consider subscribing for more content, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.